Hey, what's up guys? Today I want to talk about what makes Elden Ring invasions so difficult. Because we hear a lot of people saying that Elden Ring invasions are too difficult. I'm actually one of them. But yeah, basically in Elden Ring, you can get completely destroyed by 3 scrubs, 3 people that would get completely demolished by themselves. And it was always somewhat the case in previous games. Like, you could absolutely lose to players that were not as experienced simply due to sheer number. It's just that Elden Ring cranked that up to 100 in multiple ways. And I think the biggest culprit that makes Elden Ring invasion so much more difficult is the elephant in the room, the player limit. The player limit in Elden Ring is 4 players, which means that the best situation you're going to get, or you're going to invade in, is really, I mean, unless someone's using the Thunderstone, which can open up to a 1v1, but the best situation you're getting is a 2v1. And the worst situation you're getting, and very often the one you're going to get, is a 1v3. And the 1v3 in Dark Souls 3, for instance, was not as much of an issue, because in a 1v3 you always had the opportunity to wait for a teammate, because the player limit was higher, and when there was 3 players and 1 invader, that meant that the lobby was open for a second invader to come in. So any 1v3, your goal was to survive long enough to get some help to transform it into a 2v3. And the home team also could have 4 players, so it could be a 4v2 instead of a 1v3. And there's a big difference behind that. It's very simple math, really, because ultimately you cannot have the focus at all times on 2 people at the same time, or on multiple people at the same time. So that makes it so that dividing the attention, you get 2 2v1 situations when it's a 4v2. Or you get a 2v1 situation and a 1v1 situation when it is a 3v2. So right away there, like, a 3v2 is so much more easier because one of the 2 invaders is going to have a 1v1 situation. So the blueprint to win invasions previously was basically you survive as long as you need to get a good teammate, where one of you will have to win is 1v1. And so the person who won the 1v1 transformed the 3v2 into 2v2, which is 2 1v1, which is pretty much a much more even fight. And so that's how you even the odds previously. Now, obviously, in Elden Ring, you can't do that, because you're not going to get help unless the people you are invading actually want you to have a chance to beat them. Basically, if they are Thunderstone active, and only 2 of them, then they open themselves up for that 2v2 right away. But people that grief in this game will just simply never do that. Usually the people that open up like that are usually people that are actually looking to have, like, more of a challenge and much more of a fair fight. And so those are basically few and far between. And so that's probably the biggest reason and the biggest difference between Elden Ring and previous Souls game that makes it just much more difficult to win invasions. It's really the sheer number of players that are playing the game. And I find this really unfortunate because honestly, the reason why this channel grew in the first place was mainly due to the nature of team invasions. Because when you do team invasions, there's a much different dynamic, even like on a psychological level. It's really basically like on the primal level, 2 tribes going after one another. You get the tribe of the gankers and you get the tribe of the invaders, and you get much more emotionally involved in these sort of fights when you get to take part in it. And even if you're not necessarily in the fight, you are part of that team, so to speak, and you can actually participate in that team endeavor once you are playing the game. Except that in Elden Ring, there's not much of a team endeavor, because when you're an invader, most of the time really you're by yourself, and so it's not as much of a team game anymore. Like, for the gankers, it really has not changed that much, other than it's just much more easier for them, and probably not as fun because, you know, their prey doesn't really struggle all that much. since they're always by themselves. There's not much of an incentive to beat up one guy as opposed to beating up two guys. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that makes invasions harder. But it's not the only thing. There's definitely other aspects that are much more difficult in Elden Ring, and it's due to the nature of the game, the projectile nature of the game. Elden Ring is so much more projectile focused. There are so many attacks in Elden Ring that have ridiculous range and ridiculous tracking, so many different projectiles that can hit from so far away, so fast. And you had Projectile in previous games, but they were definitely never, not even close to as spammable as they are now in Elden Ring. And so you really have to be careful about, not like before you had to be careful about not getting blendered. That has always been a thing. But before you had to be careful about not getting blendered so you don't get too close to the 3 people you're fighting against or the 2 people you're fighting against. Because the only way you could really get blendered was if you just run in the pile and then you engage multiple people at once, and so then you get blendered. That was the thing you wanted to avoid. Problem now in Elden Ring, you can actually get blendered from any range. You don't even need to be close to your opposition for you to get blendered, simply because projectiles can actually blender you now. And the much more likely situation is that you commit to attacking one person, and that one person blenders you with another person that's attacking from range. And so as soon as you get in the range of one person that's melee, you get blendered by them simply because the other person that's next to them has a ton of very fast projectile attacks. And so that makes it so it's so much more difficult to commit to any offense in Elden Ring as opposed to previous Souls game. Because in previous Souls games you could commit to attacking a single person because you didn't have as much of a threat from projectiles as you did in Elden Ring. So that's definitely, in my opinion, the second biggest reason that makes Elden Ring invasions more difficult than previous Souls entry. And I would say those are not necessarily good things, because I always hear, you know, invasions are not meant to be fair, and I absolutely agree, otherwise that would be boring. But there's a difference between unfair, unfun, and too much. Because it was already unfair in previous games, and you were already supposed to lose in previous games. It's just that when you start to push it, it comes to a point where the idea of being at a disadvantage kind of loses its meaning, because you're not at a disadvantage anymore. You're just a sitting duck, really. And as much as some good players out there can win a lot of invasions and have a pretty decent win rate, it's really due to sheer will, not as much as ability and, you know, player outcome based on the gameplay itself, really. Because ultimately, the moment you fight anyone that has any clue about what they're doing, you are not going to win that unless you get lucky, which is very unfortunate. So basically, all the content that you're seeing from people that have good win rate, it's because they're beating up either people that play the PvE, or people that are so much significantly weaker than them in terms of gameplay. Like it's the difference in skill has to be extremely, and I mean extremely massive, for multiple people to lose against one person. And also invaders, because of all the reasons I've mentioned, have pushed the envelope so far and so hard to make sure that they have all the tools that they need to delete people, and they've basically dissected the game to be able to win these almost impossible situations. There's definitely tools for that in Elden Ring. There's definitely more tools in Elden Ring than previous Souls game. But ultimately, I do believe that invading in Elden Ring is more difficult than invading in previous Souls game. And that is despite the quality of the players that you're going to face in Elden Ring being lower than the quality of the players you'd face in other Souls games. But that's going to be a topic for another day, like why are players worse in Elden Ring than other Souls games. We're going to touch on that in another vid, but that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed these sort of voiceover vid format. I think I have fun doing them. We're going to be doing more of these. It's definitely a lot more work and a lot more time, but I think it's worth doing. So yeah, alright, have a good one, guys. Take care. Dude, he's killing the forest animal. How dare he? Star of Gankers outplayed and saved again. Thought the other guy would attack there. There you go. Now it's your turn. Oh yeah, of course. Of course. Maybe jump down. See if we can see him. Oh shit, this is... Man, maybe... That shit is so huge, like there's no way he jumped. Like he can stay there forever if he wants to. Although I'm wondering... Like can we get an angle? Like, I mean, at this point, I might as well stay like here. Let's do that. We got 10. What if we... It's better than nothing. Okay, let's try this. Oops, wrong arrows. Okay. Invisible wall, insane. Bro, this game sucks. Bro, what kind of invisible wall is that? Let's try from here. Oh shit, I like what I'm seeing. He's far. Dude, we hit that too. I should have had this. Fuck, man. We were doing so good. I should try double Great Cat though. Insane. Oh, 1000 damage punish though. It's kind of unfortunate. Bro. That's just unlucky right there for a sequence. That would have hurt.